Welcome down the rabbit hole, friends. We're here again because today Stephen filed a response to the restraining order taken out by Laura Cleary. These court documents are available publicly and they've been posted to Reddit. I've reviewed the papers and I'm going to provide you with a summary now of what I feel most comfortable talking about. They are mainly the parts of Stephen's response that apply to the issues that we've questioned here in my prior videos. So let's get started. Stephen writes, "Your Honor, I want to begin by stating clearly and without hesitation that there has never been a single incident in which my children have been harmed, endangered, or neglected under my care. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for their time under their mother's supervision." Stephen goes on to list essentially a series of normal, everyday parenting incidences where Laura or the nanny was taking care of one of the children and they received a minor injury, like a bump, a bruise, a burn, etc. I feel like there's nothing extraordinary here, and it does feel like Stephen is grasping at straws in an effort to defend himself against, many of the accusations Laura put in her court documents, and I understand that he's really feeling defensive about everything. But he does go on to make a super important point regarding Laura's court accusations. I just put out a video about how Laura ended up filing the RO against Stephen, and something that was mentioned was Laura wrote about Stephen obsessively and repeatedly calling her. In his response document, he explains why this happened in the first place, pointing out that his son Alfie had a burn injury needing medical care, and Stephen was trying to get a hold of Laura to figure out what was happening, and that's why he repeatedly called and texted her over the period of several hours. He writes, "Regarding the phone calls that were referenced in the order, those were made out of urgent concern for my son. When I saw Alfie, he had a large, professionally applied bandage on his neck, clearly from a hospital. This wasn't something done at home. It was the kind of dressing you'd expect after emergency treatment. No one had informed me of any injury, and I later learned that it was a burn caused by boiling water that had spilled on him. As a parent, discovering something like that on your nonverbal child without any prior explanation is terrifying. I was panicked and confused. Of course, I called multiple times. This was not harassment. It was instinct. It was love. I was a father trying to understand what had happened to his injured son." All right, and this is what we had discussed in some of the prior videos. That some of the accusations Laura is making towards Stephen and some of the things she's using to try to get the restraining order against him may be a little bit manipulated, exaggerated. So one thing she said in her court documents is he's obsessively calling me and texting me. And, Stephen's coming here and saying there was a reason for that, especially on that specific day. Next, Stephen goes on to accuse Laura of inciting harassment towards him by talking about him on her social media and mobilizing her fan base against him. I want to say that even if these are provable facts, it's not going to counter the allegations Laura made towards Stephen in her attempt to get the restraining order. It would only serve as evidence for Stephen to get his own restraining order against Laura. And I know that every state is very different. In my state, restraining orders are fairly easy to get, but unfortunately most people in domestic violence situations, and I'm not saying that's what this is, but in a situation where a restraining order is really needed, people will tell you it doesn't make them really any safer in the long run. It doesn't mean that people shouldn't seek one out. They definitely should, especially when they're in some kind of a violent situation, especially with a family member. But it's just something to keep in mind when thinking about what's going on here with these court proceedings regarding Stephen and Laura. Stephen goes on to make some emotional pleas. He says that he's heartbroken and he just wants to be a father to his children. He doesn't understand why he is even receiving this information about a restraining order. Now, here's how he addresses the drug use. He severely minimizes it and even glances over it. He makes a statement about how he overused a quote-unquote prescription medication for quote-unquote 2 weeks of time, and that he may have acted erratically during those 2 weeks. And this is where I think Stephen will really struggle in his quest to fight the restraining order and get his kids back. He's admitted all over social media to using drugs. So I'm not really sure what he's trying to do here. I mean, is this lying to the court? What is he going to say when he goes to the actual hearing? Is he going to say that he's only pretending to use drugs for his social media? I don't know. A lot of this doesn't make sense. Next, and this is kind of important to me and fully related to my last video, I told you guys I was looking everywhere for screenshots of messages he had from Laura, and Stephen actually supplies them in his response to the court. In these messages, Stephen is showing that Laura did give Stephen permission to take the kids for the night and have them at his house. Laura even says, yeah, the nanny can pick them up in the morning, I guess. Now, this was exactly what I was talking about in my last video. One of the reasons that Laura gave us for running out and getting the restraining order at this point in time, and this is just one of the reasons, was that Stephen had posted on social media that he took the kids in his new car out for, he said, I went on a fast ride all over the Hollywood Hills, and then he kept them at his house overnight. Laura's fans and supporters saw this, and they immediately started posting towards Laura, as I cited in my last video, saying like, Laura, what's going on? How can you let a man who's doing drugs have your children? He's out of control. And he was posting at that point some kind of weird stuff. But Laura's response was kind of like, oh my gosh, no, I'm a good mom. I wouldn't do that. I don't know why he took the kids. This is not right. She sort of insinuated that she did not give him permission to take the kids. And this is also what is insinuated in her attempt to get a restraining order on him. Stephen is making it very clear with these texts, he has them right here, right in front of us, showing that Laura did give him permission to take the kids. He was not taking the kids from her, stealing them, abducting them, kidnapping them. She wanted him to take the kids. And I think he's even made these comments on his social media several times that Laura likes to get breaks from the kids. Like, right on. Amen, sister. Like, I feel you on that. When my kids were younger, the same ages as her children, it was hard. And I remember my husband was away doing stuff for his job overseas or whatever, and it was really hard when I was alone and had to do it all by myself. So I totally understand wanting to have, your partner help you with your children, of course. I'm not sure how this all went down, but once again, what I am seeing here is that social media becomes the catalyst with which Laura makes a lot of her decisions. I think she tries to make things look a certain way to her social media crowd so that she can follow the trend that the people who support her are following. If the people who support her are like, Stephen's trash, throw him away, get rid of him, then she is more inclined to be like, you know what, you're right, let's go ahead and take out this restraining order. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only reason why she's doing this. We have seen Stephen, he is acting erratically. He is doing some crazy shit. But we need to be honest and really take a critical look, like use a critical eye to look at what's going on here, because I don't think this is all on Stephen. And he's showing us with this document that he has proof that certain things Laura is insinuating, they're not true. The rest of Stephen's response just shows additional screenshots of pleasant conversation between Laura and Stephen. It's interesting. It's very pleasant. It's basically Laura being like, I'm going to go pick up Poppy. And Stephen's like, okay, I'll meet you there. And, I'll pick you up at the car wash. Just really normal, pleasant, back-to-back texts coming in between them. There's no indication from Laura of will you leave me alone? Please stop messaging me. They talk about what happened with the burn. And I just to think that it was only a day later that she filed the restraining order against Stephen. We're not getting any sense of her being frustrated or angry or upset with Stephen. And this is what Stephen has said on his social media. He was like, I'm shocked. Where did this come from? We've been getting along. We haven't had any problems. And when you look at these text messages, yeah, that's what it looks like is going on. Obviously, Laura had other feelings. Obviously, Laura had other things going on in her life in the back of her mind having to do with Stephen. Maybe she felt like she couldn't give him any indication that she was going to file this. Maybe she felt like she couldn't tell him to leave her alone. But these text messages look like two people having pleasant, positive conversation with one another, and I'm confused by it. What do you guys think? If you want access to the court documents in full, you can always go try to look them up on Reddit. I didn't want to show all of it here, trying to keep some privacy for them, but I think these are very basic pieces of information that really answer a lot of the questions that I've had, at least as far as I'm looking at Stephen and he's acting totally shocked by all of this. And I'm like, are you that daft that you didn't realize that she wanted you to leave her alone? But then you look at these communications he's sharing and you think, no, it doesn't look like she wants you to leave her alone. So I'm not sure where it's all coming from. And it gives me like a different feeling about it. It leaves me with a lot of questions about how, why, when, where is Laura doing what she's doing. A lot of questions going through my mind tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you'll join me again next time when we head down another rabbit hole.